Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pink Nest Podcast. I'm having Melissa with me today. She's a strategic health advisor, consultant, and leadership development coach. And she has over 20 years of experience in NHS management and leadership. This is a powerful introduction. Welcome, Melissa, to my podcast.
That made me sound really great. Hi, everybody. Welcome, Nika. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm excited to be here today.
It's really nice that because we know each other also from other stories. It's really great that you took a chance and took some time to join me. I actually really love it. So we always start with the childhood stories. How was Melissa as a child and what was your childhood like? What kind of a girl were you when you grew up?
Oh, I had such a wonderful childhood. I grew up in the south of England, just a few miles from the beach, and we had a beach hut down there. So we used to just spend our whole summers just splashing in the sea and playing on the sand. And apparently I used to dip my ice cream in the sand and then lick it when I was little. My mum was always like, "You're so weird." But I think my brother would probably describe me as Little Miss Bossy Boots is what he would say. And there's a great meme, isn't there? It's like, I'm not bossy. I've just got leadership potential. And I think I always kind of knew that I liked to be the one in charge of the games. And I liked to be the one who was driving things forward and making decisions, even from a very young age. And yeah, apparently I was very tenacious as well. So when I was learning to ride a bike, I just stayed outside until it went dark at night until I could ride around the whole garden 3 times. And my mum said, "Oh, we just left you at it. We just left you to do it because we knew you wouldn't want to come in until you'd completed the tasks that you had set yourself." And then apparently I came in and I was like, "I can ride now. It's all good." So bit of that drive, I think, and I've always kind of kept that. And if I say I'm going to do something, then I really want to do it and I really commit to it until I feel that I've got myself to the level that I feel satisfied with at that time. Yeah, it's great childhood.
That's lovely to hear. And there are always nice memories. I mean, where people share their childhood stories, it's so much different from what it is today, I guess, for kids. We had a really different childhood, didn't we?
Yeah, we didn't have times and you didn't have a phone. And so you would go out. So I grew up really in the 80s and 90s and you'd go out and you were just told to be back when the street lights went off or
same.
before it got dark.
Absolutely
and
same.
Your parents didn't know where you were. We'd be building dens over on the common and just outside playing all the time. Probably didn't even really have computers or computer games until we were in our teens. And even then, all I wanted was Sonic the Hedgehog and we weren't allowed it. And that we had like a Sega or a Nintendo and that was pretty much your only choices. And then we got a bit involved in computers and stuff then, but I loved it. I always used to watch my dad, and my mum was a secretary, and so she bought me like a little typewriter. So I learned to type touch type before I was even, 10. So I'm really good on the computer because I could touch type, because I just taught, that was one of the other little skills that I taught myself because my mum could do it and I wanted to. Yeah. So, and then we went to electronic typewriters, didn't we? And then we finally got a computer. That was our childhood.
Yeah, same. It's completely the same for me. So, street lamps, when they went on, you had to go home. This was like a universal sign, like go home. And we didn't. The only time that during the day when I was at home was probably lunch. That was
to eat.
Just to eat. And even that one, I remember our parents, because I lived in a neighborhood full of block of flats. And I remember all our parents screaming through the window, like, "Hey, Nika, it's lunchtime."
Food.
This is my memory of my childhood. And street lamps, that's all there is. It's interesting. Yeah, it's very much different from today. Okay, so what drew you to NHS, healthcare? This is a little bit, maybe not connected so much, or at least not on a first notion to leadership. So share us a little bit of your story.
Do you know what? I don't know. I did my degree in business studies, and then when you come out of university, you're looking for a job. And I hear it's very hard when you come out of university now to find your first job. And I didn't really think it was that difficult for for us particularly, but I remember I applied for a recruitment role, nothing to do with IT, an IT role, something to do with IT, a role in the NHS, and what's the other? I can't remember. Another sales role, I think. And I went for the interviews, and I got offered the one in the NHS first. And it is as simple as that. It wasn't like I was particularly drawn to health. A summer previous, I'd been temping, and one of my temp roles was that I'd worked in the A&E at our local hospital, Bournemouth Hospital, and I was a ward clerk there, and I spent the whole summer literally running around the wards with pieces of paper because we didn't really have a proper IT system. So any referrals had to be on a piece of paper. So I knew my way around the whole hospital. And so when I went for the interview, I obviously had experience of working in a hospital, and I think that's why I got it. And when I started in the NHS, I just had no idea about the scope and the depth and the breadth of the roles for non-clinical staff. It wasn't something that had ever really occurred to me. And then I think when I was there, I just realized just how much you could learn and how much you could develop and how you could progress through your career in all different aspects. So there's obviously like HR and finance and IT, and then there's project management and operational management, and then different organizations that you can work in. So I think right from the beginning, I was super ambitious, and I set myself little challenges every few years that I was going to be a project manager by this date, and then I was going to be an operational manager by this date, and then I kept achieving them. So I kept setting myself more and more. But I think if it hadn't have been for that actual like depth and breadth of the different roles that you could do, I'm not sure that I would have stayed for so long, because I don't know that it would have been enough to interest me. But as it was, it did. And then, I just fell in love with all of I like that, the idea of doing something of value and it aligning to your own values. And I enjoyed being able to see the difference we could make to patients' lives, I suppose.
Because people, I mean, usually when people hear NHS, they always think, oh, she must be a doctor or a nurse or something. But like you said, there's so big
many
operators behind it, just running daily. So you stayed for over 20 years, 21 years to be exact. And you did really a lot of things, led senior teams, managed large operations, multiple sites, enormous projects. How did this level of responsibility feel for you? Because it is a big responsibility. I mean, the numbers are vast when I'm reading them now.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I look back and I just think, gosh, I think my first manager's role, I managed 4 people. And then the next role that I got was in a maternity unit. And all of a sudden I was responsible for 30 people. And then the next role was like 120 and then 500. So it was kind of scaled, I suppose, in terms of understanding your level of responsibility or being able to work within that level of responsibility. But it was really challenging at times. And I would say that it doesn't really matter whether you're managing 4 people or 500 people. There is always one person that takes up 90% of your time, and everybody else just sort of fits in and around that. Like I said, like the scope of being able to do different projects. And I think that because I was so driven, that was always something that like excited me and kept me interested and engaged in the role. But and one of the things that I did from my first manager's job was I always looked for courses that I could go on. And I was quite lucky because they had a leadership development course. And I was like, so I said to my boss and I said, oh, there's this course. Can I go on that? Or is there funding for me to go? And she was one of the best bosses I ever had. I absolutely adored her. She was so supportive. She's like, yes, absolutely. Let me sign the forms, sent me on this course. So off I go, Nika, right? And I'm all like, I'm in my early 20s. I'm all like, look at me, I'm a manager, and go off to this course. And to say I was out of my depth would be an understatement. And I was like, I don't know what any of these words mean. I don't know what people are talking about. What type of leader are you? I was like, I don't know. Are there different types of leaders? And because you don't, like, genuinely, you don't know. And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm a manager. I've been a manager for a few months now, but I don't know what type of leader I am. And I think because that opened my eyes then to how you approach different team members, how you understand yourself, a bit of self-reflection. And I think that is and then I just built on those tools and I continued to go to leadership courses right up until the end, actually, because I just don't think you can ever learn enough, and not just
Mm,
about yourself, but you encounter different people, you encounter different challenges. So when I started in the money, when I started in the NHS had money. Okay. And
mm,
we could do these courses and we could invest in our services and things. And then as in the difference to when I
mm,
left, and we spent all of our time trying to save money, it was a very, very different environment when I left to when I started. But I think going on all of these courses really helped me to develop and learn and understand about myself, but then also about other people.
mm. We're quite alike in this aspect because I'm also a fan of courses and education. I think particularly for women in our age, it's super important that we just work with our brain as much as we can. And
Yeah.
I think like new knowledge, it's super important. So I'm really a fan of courses and additional education. I mean, I've been doing courses not necessarily completely in my field for all my life, but I think this is what makes it great. Stepping away from, so you were in NHS for 20 years, as I said, and then you stepped away. What made you do this decision? What made you decide this? And what was the process like? Because I know that, I mean, 20 years is a long time.
Yeah,
So
it's a long
it
time.
must have been really challenging for you at the same time as well.
It was, in some ways, it was a really easy decision to make because of the situation that I found myself in. But in others, I think it had been a long time coming. I think it had been a long time coming. One of the things that, so as I've already alluded to, when I started in the NHS had money. We invested in services, we invested in people. There was more time. There was kind of less people, I suppose. So not just patients, but less people in roles. And so we had time to work with people. And then by the end, and appreciating that I was then obviously a lot more senior towards the end, but there was no time and there was no money and everything.
Mm.
So we found that it got very, very repetitive. I found that it got very, very repetitive, and I was in the unscheduled care space. So what that means for everybody else is that I was in the emergency space. So I was building this new A&E department. I was looking at how it was going to run, but I was also working with external agencies and writing plans. And to say
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a lot of unscheduled or emergency care plans, Nika, would be an understatement. And there was a combination of different things. And well, and just to be honest, I had a manager that just didn't really respect me or my role, and I was finding that really challenging. And also, I'm quite independent, and I've been in my post for a long time, and I'd been at a senior level for a long time. And so there was maybe a little bit of, I thought I knew best, or maybe, maybe that was right. Maybe I did know best. So we came to a bit of a blow. So that was frustrating, and I didn't really respect him as a leader. He wasn't. I didn't feel like he was supporting me in my role. So I was looking for another role in the NHS anyway. But then on top of that, I just thought, do you know what? I have written this emergency care plan 18 times now, and
Mm-hmm.
it's still saying the same thing as what it said 5 years ago, and we still haven't been able to do it. And so I just thought, oh, I don't know. I don't know whether this is going to be the right thing for me anymore, and I don't know what I can add, and I don't know that it's really aligned to my values anymore. And then another role came up outside of the NHS, and I sort of like went along with the process of it. and wasn't really 100% sure whether I would take it or whether I would go. I applied for voluntary redundancy in the NHS and I didn't get it. So I was really cross about that. So they offered me this job and then I was just like, right, I'm going. And I just went. And I didn't really look back. I didn't really think about it too much. But the doors really firmly closed. And I really struggled with that for a year or so and not because of me personally, but because of the NHS is going through a big structural rechange. There are no jobs that have been advertised since I've left, really. So I can't see myself ever going back now. And I don't know how I still don't know really how I feel about that. So, but the door is closed. I've just got to move on, haven't I?
Oh, yeah. But I think, you know what they say, I mean, one door closes, the other one opens. So I know sometimes it's like the last thing you want to hear, but it's usually true, because look at yourself now. I mean, you're doing something that's much more closer now to where I'm home. So that's events and festivals and medtech. So tell us a little bit now what you're doing now. I mean, I know already, but for the audience, this is super interesting because it's such a great intersection of your experience, but also in events industry.
Yeah, so I literally fell into the events industry, Nika. I was working as an operational manager in a hospital in Hampshire, and the local festival, which is quite a big festival in the UK, wanted some bit more involvement from the local hospital because they had a few incidents that had happened. And so in my role, I was the obvious person to go and get involved. And so me and a couple of colleagues went along and we worked from a hospital perspective for the first couple of years. And then I think they really valued our input, and in particularly our system input. So because we're not medical providers. So just to be clear, I am not a medical provider. I don't run a company that provides medical cover to festivals and events. The role that we were working with at this festival was much more of that strategic advice role. So working with the local hospital and the local ambulance service and the medical provider on site, making sure that they had all the information that they need, making sure that it all aligned from a system-wide perspective, so that if anything did happen, you had the communication channels were already there and people know who to refer into and how to refer in, and we could make sure that we could get the information flowing like both ways. And so, yeah, I've been doing, so that was 7 years. That was pre-COVID. Me and Nika were just talking about life pre and post-COVID and how it feels everything pre-COVID feels so long ago. But yeah, pre-COVID, I started doing that work. And then I've just maintained that contract. And then I've asked other people if they want help and support. And everyone's like, oh, this will be really useful. So yeah, but basically what I do now then is I work alongside probably 3 different parties, really. So I'm doing some training for safety advisory group leads on the role of their local ambulance provider at their safety advisory group meeting, and what they would expect from their medical providers in terms of the documentation that will be submitted into the safety advisory group, and giving them some training around the new regulations that are coming in. So the government has put its statutory instrument forward now, which looks like it's going to be signed soon. And then, so from 2027, that any medical provision on an event or festival site will now need to be under a regulatory body called the CQC, and that's for the treatment of disease, disorder and injury, and that's new. So up until this point, medical providers have been able to treat disease, disorder and injury. So see and treat patients in an event site or on a festival site and not be registered with the CQC. So they've changed all of that now. So it's quite good timing that I am setting up this business and helping people to learn around that. And then I'm also working with medical providers, helping them with understanding the CQC registration process, because some of them are registered, some of them aren't, some of them don't want to be. That's fine, because first aid won't be covered, so they wouldn't all necessarily need to be. And then but mainly I'm working with festivals and event organisers to help them understand the new guidelines and making sure that they know what they're buying, because I know what it feels like. So I've always been very good, Nika, at almost interpreting, you know this because you speak different languages, because clinicians and non-clinical people speak very, very different languages. And I think clinicians can by accident get very clinical and quite technical, and then maybe event organisers don't necessarily understand what it is that they're buying. Do they need that level of service? Do they even understand that level of service, or are they asking the medical provider to provide a service that actually isn't going to be safe and aligned to their risk assessment? So I'm quite good at doing that translating piece of work and just helping people to understand where we are now and where we're moving to. And I think it's going to be so good for the industry, Nika. Like, I genuinely feel really passionate about this, because actually the standard of care out there is so varied at the moment. And we know that there are incidents, some really serious incidents actually. And we know that we can raise the standard of care to enable everybody who's going to a festival or event, because people are more health conscious now, aren't they? Nika and I are doing some work together around this and thinking about the neurodiverse population, thinking about how people act differently now. So whereas in our day, as we were saying before, like in our day, you just used to go out every Friday and Saturday night, and there wasn't that many festivals. I mean, Glastonbury was obviously going, but there wasn't anywhere near as many festivals and events as there are now. You might go to a few student nights, etc. But things have changed, and I think people don't tend to go out every weekend anymore, and they do tend to save their money and go to an event. And it's really important for parents to know that their 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old is going to be safe at an event, and that they're going to have the services on site to be able to manage whatever the whatever the outcome is of, because it might be that they fall off something or fall over, or it might just be that, because for a lot of young children or a lot of teenagers, this is their first weekend away from home as well, isn't it? And so the biggest things that we get asked for in medical and welfare tents is blister packs, so blister plasters, and sun cream. So yeah, we should do some education. And water, yeah. Well, they always get water on sites now. So yeah, I think there's a lot that can be done in this space, and it doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that festivals and events organisers need to spend more money. There may be an element of that, but it's just about making sure that you've got it right. Like, does it all need to be medical cover? Would you actually be better off with welfare, or with maybe some of these spaces that we've been talking about, maybe like these calm nest spaces that you can just have a bit of time to defrag? And it's not around having lots of ambulances and lots of paramedics and doctors on your site. That's not always the answer. It's looking at the bigger picture. So that's what I'm working with people to do.
Yeah, and it's not just, I think also expectations changed, particularly with the generational change as well. I think that, in our times, like 20 years ago when you went to a music festival, it was not, toilets, these basics were covered, and it was okay. We didn't think much, to be honest. Now it's a little bit different. I think expectations are different. I mean, obviously price performance is also way different. And I think that if you're spending a few £100 on a festival ticket, you do want to have some level of, like you've said, security as well, health as well, safety, in all possible aspects as well, not just accommodation and, good food. And it's a little bit different. I mean, I can speak also from an organizer perspective myself, being one in the past. So I think it's different than it was. I mean, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's also completely fine. But I totally agree with you that also standards will have to somehow level up with the expectation as well. And somehow, so I think this standardized practice is actually a good thing, because it also, this kind of standardization also allows like a person to, if it looks on a, I don't know, on a poster and says, okay, this one is certified. This sounds good. Like you said, not just from parents' perspective, but also from a festival goer perspective as well.
Yeah, I
I
think it's
think
really
it's a
important
good.
for everybody. You know what I'd love, Nika, is that like, you know, when you go to a restaurant and they have their food hygiene, I think we'd all love if festivals could have their safety stars. So this you know, this festival's been rated as being 5-star for safety, because you know, as parents of teenagers and stuff, like you do want to know, and teenagers are much more, well, the social media doesn't, you know, that kind of helps and it doesn't help in equal measure, but teenagers, they want to go and have a good time, don't they? And they want to know that they're safe and all their stuff isn't going to be stolen. And
True.
that's why I think cashless festivals are great, actually. But not only that there is somewhere for them to go if anything does happen to them, or they just need a little bit of support while they're on site. So yeah, some festivals I think are making huge inroads into this, and I think it's just about not making everybody doesn't have to be gold standard, but let's have a base standard, and then we can all start to achieve that. Yeah, so watch this space, Nika. We'll see.
Absolutely. All right, a little bit about your free time. I just recently discovered you ride horses.
Yeah,
Which is something that I grew up with. I'm very passionate about. I had a horse myself as well, and I love horses. My favorite animals for sure. You're also learning to line dance, and you believe making time for joy is just as important as making time for success. I think it's a great statement, and it kind of feels radical in the hustle culture. Hustle is something that I loathe this word. I hate the word hustle because it has such a negative connotation. But where did this belief come from? Like joy is, which I totally agree with, by the way, making time for joy is just as important as making time for success.
Yeah, I think when I was in the height of an operational manager, you can just work all of the time. I would leave home, especially when managing a busy A&E, you know, you'd leave home at 6 o'clock in the morning, get to work, and then you wouldn't be home till 7, 8 o'clock at night. And so my weekends, when I wasn't on call or being called or some disaster wasn't happening, I was just like, I just needed an activity that you can switch off. And as you know, Nika, when you are riding a horse, you can only think about riding that horse at that time, because if you don't, you'll find yourself on the floor. So it's you and them, and they're such wonderful animals, and they're so calming, and they're used a lot for therapy. And I kind of used it as my therapy, you know, maybe going out for a hack around the forest or having lessons. So I ride Western style mostly. I do a bit of English as well, but Western style. And then that kind of led into more recently the line dancing. Oh, by the way, everybody, line dancing is so much fun. And again, you have to it takes you completely out of everything that you're doing. And just for that 1 hour, you are focusing on where your feet are, listening to the music, dancing in sync with everybody else. And yeah, I think if I didn't do these things, Nika, I'd just be in therapy somewhere, just lying on a couch going, oh my God, it really helps to defrag my brain. But I found that I was just really, really good at holding everybody else together. And then I realized one day that there was nobody holding it together for me. And so I thought, well, I'm nobody's going to come and save me. I need to just hold this together for myself. And the way to do that is to allow my brain to concentrate completely on something else. And I would totally recommend that to everybody, like to go, whatever it is, painting, or it doesn't have to be, you know, mine's activity focused because I'm quite busy and I quite like to be moving. But for some people, it's about being still, isn't it? Reading a book and just not letting your brain think about anything else other than the thing that you're doing. I think they call it mindfulness, Nika, but you know.
True. No, and you've actually mentioned something that it's actually great for closing our interview. I think a lot of people who are so invested in I mean, just in life in general, we really tend to forget about ourselves, don't we? We are so good at, like you said, holding everybody else together, holding the situation together, working with everybody, really paying attention to everything else except for us. So I think this is a great point that you've made for the end. And I would like you just to say a few more sentences on for a woman listening right now who is exhausted, successful on paper, but quietly wondering if there's a different way to work and live, which we can both say, yes, it is.
Yeah.
What would you want her to hear from you today?
I think so. You are not tired because you're doing something wrong. You're tired because you're doing too much of what doesn't matter to you anymore. And as a woman, I think we can have so much headspace. We have to carry all of this mental load, whether you have children or whether you don't have children, and you're holding everything together all of the time. And I think sometimes it's just really important, isn't it? Just to figure out, spend a little bit of time and think about what matters to you now, especially as you're getting older, or even if you're young. Like, what matters to you? What do you want to spend your time doing? And what do you want to do? Because I give you permission to do the thing that you want to do.
It's super important advice. Melissa, thank you so much for taking the time and speaking with me. It was such a lovely conversation. I love these kind of chats. And I'm really looking forward to what we invent together. Super
Yeah,
excited
me
for
too.
this.
I can't wait. Yeah.
Thank
Watch
you.
this space.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.